the City of Wausau to order this Thursday, November 14th, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. The first item on the agenda is the public comment for matters not appearing on the agenda. Of course, we will hear comments relating to agenda items will be allowed when that specific item is on the agenda. So for now, if there's any public comment, we certainly welcome that now. Any further public comment? Otherwise, we'll move then, hearing no public comment, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the October 10th, 2019 meeting. Motion to approve would be in order. There is a motion by Mary. Is there a second? Becky, any comments or questions with regard to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of said motion to approve the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is agreed to, and thus the minutes of October the 10th, 2019 are approved. Moving then on to the next item on the agenda, which is the discussion, possible action on the dedication of a right-of-way of South 18th Avenue from South 17th Avenue to South 18th Avenue. Eric,
I can take this, Gary.
start that one off.
Sure. So if you recall, we had brought a resolution forward for recommendation to council for the vacation of 18th Avenue previously. And, you know, we kind of went through the steps in the public hearing for that, but we haven't brought it to council yet, you know, to permanently vacate that. One of the questions that came up from committee as well as others was, what are we going to do when we don't have any right-of-way dedicated at this point in time? So the idea is to work through the dedication process to ensure that we do have property just to the north of 18th Avenue for the reconstruction of that, and that's what this agenda item is for, to accept the dedication being offered to replace 18th Avenue.
I'll move to approve the dedication.
There is a motion to approve. Is there a second? There's a second by Linda. Any comments or questions? We have just any public comment with regard to this? Or?
Yep.
Bill Schofield, 1425 North 12th Avenue. Just again, this is our continued, we've been working with staff, this is our continued effort to redevelop the area around Shopko and this empty parcel that we've had. This street itself is, allows us, moving this street allows us to put a $1.6 million building up and straighten out a traffic issue going into County Market and a number of other items. So again, the vacation has gone through most of its process. This is our next step. We have some design issues we're working through. One of the questions that came up at this committee and at planning was the new building going to be built? We have leases started with 3 tenants for it. So this definitely is. There's new marketing signs on the property too. So want to reassure that, and we believe the financing and everything's all in place. So we're feeling pretty comfortable about it. Just for an add-on, there are no tenants yet for the Shopko building. We're looking at a number of parties. We've been told no by more than we've had hoped, but we continue to look at that, and we'll be back in front of you for other things. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Certainly.
Can you just stay there for a
Certainly.
quick moment? You mentioned that a new building is going up on the open lot. Is that what you just said?
Yes, behind Abbey Bank and the Starbucks building, there's a green space.
Okay. Thank you. I was just making sure it wasn't going into the parking lot of Shopko, right? It's that open green space that's right next to
Well, the road
Starbucks?
moves so that we have room for the building. We were originally going to move the tin sheds. When we first worked with the TIF district and taking the old theater down, this goes back quite some time. Our plan was to change Annie's, which we brought Abbey Bank in. We took the theater down. That was going to be Panera, but that ended across the street, so we ended up with a Holiday. That Holiday is actually operated by the County Market people, so there's close relationship. It left us a parcel that was too small. And then we also had the safety issue of going into Shopko, which is on private land, not going into county market with that silly little jog
Yeah.
and all the cars leaving the gas station. So we subsequently came up with a plan. We have had to alter a building. Normally, they're 60-foot deep, a typical strip center. This building, we've fitted in to make this particular lot work with moving the street to align correctly. So we've fitted a custom building to go in there. It's an 11,000 square foot building. It's pretty attractive, again, where we want to keep what we started with Abbey Bank and the rebuild. So that's what's going on that lot.
And the South 18th Avenue, it's just moving north by how much?
Well, you voted to vacate 51 feet of right-of-way, and we're
51?
dedicating 51 feet of right-of-way.
Okay.
There's some design questions, it's just with your Brads on that one.
Okay.
We agreed to disagree, but we're working on it, so,
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
And then my question for you,
Yep.
Eric, I don't know if we got this memorandum in our packet.
No,
okay.
this was just done. This is actually.
Just done
for-
today?
Yeah,
Okay.
for Plan Commission, but I thought it would be beneficial for you to kind of understand where the planning department is at with this as well.
Okay, can you just summarize
I can,
the
yeah,
the
yeah.
memo really quickly for us? Just some high points on things that we should know.
Yeah, so one of the things is we're working through this, these are really design concepts, and we're not there yet. So the consideration really is for sidewalks on both sides of that street, or just one side of that street, and then which side of that street it's going to be on. The other thing is that with 51 feet of right-of-way, we wouldn't have enough space, having 3 lanes on that proposed design for that roadway, and then having a sidewalk on each side. So those are some design concepts that we're kind of working through. So from the planning department, their discussions were, we want to make sure that we accommodate all modes of transportation, which we understand. There's some concerns on our side as well with the bus stop there. We want to make sure that that's accommodated, and we do that well during the design. But a lot of that summarized in here, both with their concerns as well as some other solutions for that with what we're doing.
And any design changes or when things are kind of more final or precise, they'll come back to council?
Typically,
Or CISM.
right, typically they don't, but I'd be happy to bring them back, the concepts on what we decide and what the layout and stuff is, I mean, typically, once our street projects are approved with the budgets and stuff, but we can certainly bring it back once we have the renderings, yeah.
Okay,
Before we
yeah.
bid them out. So,
I'd be interested to see that
Sure.
concept or that design. I know that there's a
Yep.
lot of questions about flow of traffic and what's going on there, and bus stops,
Yep.
and so that's a really central location for a lot of things a lot of great things that happen there. So I'd love to just be in the know.
Yeah,
And then I saw something about a $300,000,
yes.
like reconstruction cost or something. That's our responsibility?
Correct, that'll be a TIF expenditure, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Linda?
To comment on the parking lot, I know it's just adjacent, but I think it was grandfathered in before we had the tree island ordinance in parking lots. So for the developer and also for the city, some trees in that area would be really nice.
We'll-
Thank you.
We'll focus on that,
It's
Linda.
just like a
Yep,
big
I got- I'll
waste
put the
field.
note. Yep, all right.
Thank you.
So a motion has been made in a second with regard to the dedication of right-of-way of South 18th Avenue from South 17th Avenue to South 18th Avenue. Any further comments or questions with regard to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is agreed to, and thus we agreed to the right-of-way South 18th Avenue from South 17th Avenue to South 18th Avenue. Moving then on to the next item on the agenda, which is the discussion possible action on renaming East Rim Mountain Drive to Fleet Street. So that is in your packet.
This is a little bit more of a housekeeping item. back when the Marathon County kind of took the lead on changing the road names and doing some readdressing, East Rib Mountain Drive was proposed to be renamed to Fleet Street. That was put on hold because of a court case, a legal. That's all been taken care of, apparently, so this is just coming back to rename that one stretch of East Rib Mountain Drive to Fleece Street to make it one continuous street, and there's one address on there, they've been notified of that.
So motion would be in order to rename Rib Mountain Drive, East Rib Mountain Drive to Fleet Street. A motion would be in order for that? There's, Becky, is there a second? Mary is the second. Any comments or questions with regard to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is agreed to unless we rename East Rib Mountain Drive to Fleet Street. Moving then on to the next item on the agenda is the discussion, possible action on amending section 10.20.030, all-night parking prohibited, overnight parking during winter months. Who wants to take the lead on this?
You want me to start us off?
You-
Okay, so the committee will recall that last spring, after Snowmageddon and the winter from heck, we started to talk about what it takes to properly clear our streets. We talked about snow emergencies, and we talked about some difficulties that we had plowing in certain areas. And, you'll recall over the last few months that we've had a couple areas where the right-of-way is so narrow that whether the street is full of snow or not, the plow has a hard time getting in, even with minimal snow events. And so on some of those, we recently have restricted parking on one side or the other so that there's at least enough room for a plow to get in. And yet, there's other areas in town where you just either can't do that or you shouldn't have to. And so the right-of-way in the winter, as winter progresses, gets narrower and narrower. And so I got some photographs. These were all taken in District 7. And I sent them over to Eric. I got them from one of our plow drivers at DPW. And so they took these pictures during the season. And so from left to right, you'll see the one that's on the far left. If you can't see it, we'll have to stand up. But this car, underneath all that snow is a car. And that car has been plowed in up to the doors because it never moves. And where the windshield has been slightly wiped off on the driver's side, that car actually has a $100 snow emergency parking ticket on it, and it's still in the same spot. So in that case, the parking ticket happened and it's still ineffective. People just don't move their cars. And so nobody's ever going to get that car out of there without a Herculean effort, first. But second, you can't clean that street properly. And so then the neighbors complain, and it just gets worse and worse. Picture number 2 is North First Avenue in the 1200 block, right before you get to Strobridge. That was taken last week, I believe, and that, we didn't even have snow yet, but you can see what happens with the right-of-way. And the picture was taken from the plow, so you can see the width of the plow, and there's cars parked on both sides of the street, and what I'll call your attention to is the fact that cars are coming up the street the other way. And so what happens when those cars reach the plow and those cars are parked in the way, you already have an impasse, and now add snow and snow storage. So these cars, a lot of these same folks park in the same spot year-round. It doesn't matter if it's winter or summer. All these houses have driveways. A lot of them have driveways that are 30-plus feet in length, and they don't use them. So then you move on to picture number 3. That's Strobridge between Cherry and First Avenue. That right-of-way is barely the width of our plow, and you'll see at the rental house at the corner of Cherry and Strobridge, the rental car is in this, rental unit's car is in the same spot where it remains year-round. Even in a snow emergency, those cars don't leave. And so, they may or may not get tickets, but at the end of the day, that street in its entirety can't be plowed because the plow can't even get in at all. So in the meantime, the adjacent residents are calling, complaining that they're not getting plowed out. And so then I email Rick and say, Rick, did our plow driver miss a street? Well, no, he didn't miss a street, he couldn't get in. And so then we move down to the next photo. That is, I believe, North First Avenue in the 1600 block before you get to Boss Creek. There's our famous stop sign at the bottom of the hill in the foreground, you'll see. And so that snow there, I think that was probably February-ish. We weren't even done with our 5 feet of snow yet, and that right-of-way is already encroaching to the point where it looks like one lane. And so then what happens is they have to get in there and try to remove snow, not only so traffic can come through, but they also need to be able to push the snowbanks back for snow storage. And when there's cars parked in there, none of that can happen. And then we go over to the picture that's over here, and that is, I believe, North 2nd Avenue in the 1500 block. And that is parked full year-round also. And it looks like that on a good day, and it's even worse when it snows. And so I wanted to have some examples of what our plow drivers are seeing. I'm sure it's the same with all the plow drivers on all the routes, but my plow driver was good enough to take some photos for me during the season and after, and give them to us so we can see what they're up against. And so it made sense to me, you know, a number of years ago, we went to this even odd parking year-round. We used to have it just in the summer months. And we now are starting to see the effect of what that brings. And it really is causing a problem with getting the streets cleaned properly. And I think that we probably could have foreseen that when it happened, but we were certainly willing to try it for a number of years. It's not getting any better, it's actually getting worse. And so with that, you know, I had asked Eric and the police department and the city attorney's office to kind of work together and find us a solution. And the solution that's proposed really isn't to take overnight parking away forever, and it's not even to just limit it to the summer. It's if we could just have it from December 1st until the end of February, which is the core of snow season. That would prevent Eric from having to call a snow emergency every time it snows. At some point, when you have a snow emergency too often, every time there's a few flakes, people get desensitized to it and they stop paying attention. And so he shouldn't have to call a snow emergency every time we have 2 inches of snow, but they still have to clear the road. And so this, I think, would help him, help them all, get the streets cleared. When there's a snow emergency, people that have more cars than they have driveway need to get off the street anyway. And so those folks are needing to find a solution. You know, whether it's a house where everyone's kids are home all at once or whatever that is, or, you know, if you've got house guests, I'm sure there's some mitigating circumstances, but I think that by and large, there needs to be a way to get the street cleaned separate from all of this. And I think if we can at least encompass the core of the snow season, if we have a bad spring storm or whatever, they could still use snow emergency for that. But I think we've kind of come to a point where we really need to find a way to have a more efficient way to remove snow in our neighborhoods. And some of our right-of-way is so narrow. Some of these streets are even wider than the average in the city's core, and they're already bad. So that's why, you know, I have kind of, even in the committee since spring, since the snow left, been pushing for us to find a solution, because it was quite a struggle last spring. So,
Great. Eric, did you want our last staff?
and we've got Rick too, so, yep.
Rick, we'll ask staff of Cord here also.
Typically, after a snowstorm, and if you look at the fourth picture over, our staff consists of everyone we have goes out and plows typically from 11 to 7 or 8, 9 o'clock the next morning. That staff goes home. Some of them will come back that night at 11 for snow removal. We don't have anybody. When the phone call comes down to the secretaries down at the shop, hey, that car's moved, can you come up and plow that over now? Well, we don't have that capability of doing that, plus it's extra work. And then the neighbor downstream from that, he has cleaned out his driveway, or she's cleaned out her driveway, and they get that snow back in their driveway. So it becomes an issue for the neighborhood and the neighbors also. It's also that our plows are not getting any smaller, and I know we have traffic calming that we make narrower streets. Sturgeonetti comes to mind. Down by the Wow, there's really no storage there, and we get frustrated with that. But then if one of my plow operators looks down a street and they see a car, they're probably not going to go down there and take a chance that they're going to get in an accident and lose points and get something against their personal insurance with an accident. And we had an incident up on First Avenue last snow season, I believe it was, that the car habitually would park right by his driveway, and it's on a steep hill. Our plow operator lost traction, slid by, just narrowly missed that car. If he wouldn't have had to swerve around that, he probably would have had enough traction to get up that hill and get over the top, but didn't. Slid back, slammed into a boulevard tree, tore off a bunch of the wing, had some damage to it. So it is an issue that's always been there. One of my concerns is like the boulevards up in Highland Park and also on the south end. typically, even in the summer, you can't drive through there and think about your mirror's going to maybe ding that parked car there. But you think about one of our big plows, and they're inches away from everything that they do, either mailboxes or plowed car, or parked cars or things like that. So that's just what I had to say, if anybody has any questions.
Rick, how wide is the plow with the wing on?
We have a 13-foot plow and a 9-foot wing. And of course, they're articulated, so that takes a little bit away of the width. But they're still, close to 20 feet when the plow and the wing is down.
Linda?
What kind of communication exists between Public Works and the police department in terms, and vendors who could tow cars? I mean, obviously, all the tickets in the world aren't going to change behavior, but maybe impounding would?
We
I know
have a-
years ago, we talked about that, just tow it away, the chronic offenders.
In the past number of years, we've had a great relationship with the police department, and they've worked diligently right with us. They're just part of our team now. The only thing is, they've got an awful lot of other things to take care of, and our limited staff, like all of our departments. So typically, they're real good, and we call them in, but they can only do so much for us. I think we still have a no-tow rule. I know we
Why?
had, and
Why do we have a no-tow rule? If this is this is a problem for ambulances to get through when the street can't get
I
plowed?
guess I can't answer that.
Fire trucks?
As far as procedure, but my understanding was that we did not have the capability of towing. Now, that doesn't mean if we have one there that's habitual and that we don't order it, that's probably up to the attorney's office and to the police department to do.
Well, I was a fan for a while of going to a system like Minneapolis has, where if your car is out when it snows, your car will be towed, impounded, and you can pay $100 to get it out of hock. But I think we, in some cases, lack the infrastructure to tow all those cars. And when we sat around the table at the police department trying to work on a solution, we had a number for how many of those cars there actually are, and if you were going to go out and pull them all, it's like hundreds of vehicles. This has been getting out of hand since they started to allow this even out all winter, and it's been getting out of hand for like 10 years. So I think people are to the point where they don't move, and when there's a snow emergency, they don't move. They're willing to roll the dice and see if they'll get a ticket, because part of the problem is that when they're trying to clean the streets overnight, that's the police department's busiest hours. So the likelihood that they'd be able to free up an officer to run up there and write a ticket is pretty slim. I mean, some of them get them, or they'll go back there and ticket them afterwards, but by then, it's either plowed in up to the doors or not plowed at all. And so, I don't oppose the idea of towing cars, but, and having some mechanism for people to get them back, but I think the logistics of that were problematic. I talked with Court about that, I don't know, about 6 months ago. And he didn't think that we would be able to store. Years ago, they used to take cars to DAR Auto Body, and they'd leave them out there until people came to get them. But I don't know that do we have that ability now? It just seemed like we didn't have the,
Right now, we have the ability, normally if there's a traffic hazard, to tow a vehicle, but we don't have anything set up where we're towing and storing and taking on that responsibility. I think that might land into another discussion that involves, potentially towing a contract or some sort of thing where we have something in place where we're dealing with that. Otherwise, it seems piecemeal at this point. To the point of these vehicles parked on the road, as you alluded to, there's hundreds of vehicles. Just going off the top of my head, I recall like one of the snow emergencies, if not most of the snow emergencies, involved close to 200 tickets each time, and we were able to go out and enforce that. So that it's impossible to tow that many vehicles, as you talked about. But if there's something that's clearly a road hazard, that's something we can deal with. But that's in a different capacity than under the snow emergency guys.
I just wanted to bring up one more thing, is that usually around the holidays, give a little bit of a grace period, because we know that relatives will be visiting, and I know during that week of the holidays, we had a kind of a grace period that we understand that, they might have children home from college or relatives over, and we kind of work around that. But, that's always been a kind of unstanding rule or whatever. But then the rest of the year, we'd like to have something.
I always find that when a parking ordinance like this comes forward, it's always very sensitive, right? Because the surrounding districts that's close enough to downtown, the housing is very dense. And we have a lot of rental property, sometimes even duplexes, right? And so some of these areas may not have a long enough driveway. They may not even have a driveway at all. They may not even have a garage. And I'm always very torn when we have these conversations because, first of all, I don't know where they're going to park. And sometimes you have, I'll give you an example. You have two working parents, right? They have two vehicles and they might have, a teenager that can drive, and there goes a third vehicle in some of these dense neighborhoods. And I feel like, again, it's hard for me to say, okay, we're just going to reinstate, this ordinance to not allow parking from 2:30 in the morning till 6:30 all across, the board on these dates during our heaviest winter season. But I find it concerning that I don't know where citizens are going to park. And then and Linda, I think you made a really great comment about that enforcement, right? Are we getting to the point now where maybe we need to start thinking about having the infrastructure to enforce the towing and impounding so that we eliminate those behaviors, right? Because if you see there, like Lisa mentioned, that car is just sitting there. There's already a ticket. They're not even going to move it. And so we still have the problem for our snowplows and our employees. And so I think that we need to find solutions on enforcing the behavior, right? Maybe we need to start looking at impounding and putting infrastructure and staff and budget together for something like this, because we're growing as a community. And we need to take a look at how we're going to provide, parking for some of these dense homes around the districts that surround downtown Wausau. That's not going away, and I don't know where people are going to park. And I know it's only at a given time, timeline, right? It's only from November or December to February, and I get it, but I just, it's hard to make a decision on something like this, especially when you take a look at my district. And people are parking on their lawn, and then I get calls from citizens saying they're storing stuff, their cars on the lawn, that's not allowed. So I just don't know how we can accomplish that with an ordinance like this for those dense neighborhoods. And I just really want to share some of my thoughts, and I would agree with Linda and Lisa that maybe, towing and, have an impound could be an opportunity for us down the road.
Lisa?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think that the logistics of a tow policy, it could be an awful lot of cars, but if we were to go, and that's why when we crafted this, we were looking for the smallest window we could possibly, without being excessive. We figured 4 hours a night for 3 months of the year. That's it. Because I think that inside and outside that, or outside of that window, you could manage it in other ways. We can manage it with snow emergency if it's bad enough. The brunt of the heavy snow season would still be covered. I think if we were going to go to a tow policy, though, it might make sense that if we go to something like this, where we have this restriction for winter, when that's violated, that's when you would want to tow. I don't think you'd want to do just a tow policy. I think you'd need something like this, where people have a structured framework. During these months, you need to be off the road between 2 and 6. That gives them a window to get in, get things clean, and in the morning, people can come right back and park there all day and half the night. But they just need that window to get in and get out, and then when that's violated, if you were going to create the conduit to impound cars or tow them, that's when you would tow, because hopefully, at least half of this problem would take care of itself as people comply with the ordinance. Now, when there's a snow emergency, the same people that have trouble finding places to go need to find places to go. And they're probably already getting the $100 tickets if they're not. So, I think that that part would work itself out. We certainly could talk about that and work out the framework for where you would take these cars and what you would, how people would go about getting them back. We'd have to look at the legality of charging people to get their car back and where we would keep them. I mean, obviously, you have to keep them safe, because if they're damaged in the process, who knows what the liability is. So that's a whole separate conversation, but I still think that with winter coming on, since we now have snow already, that we need to at least take this step and see what the compliance is. And if it's still this bad, then I think we'd look at a stiffer penalty.
Becky?
Is there any zoning or ordinance for rental properties that they need to provide some type of parking in the winter? Because if you look through the rental ads, for some reason I do, but if you do, you will see on-street parking, on-street parking, on-street parking. We offer on-street parking. They don't say we offer one parking spot, on-street parking. And that's all, Gary, it's yours, part of mine, it's, it's all of that. And so well, they have to find a place to park, but where? And then they're not going, here we go with enforcement, because then they're not going to comply because they can't. Then we ticket them, which isn't working. Well, behavior's not going to change because they have no place to go. Do you see what I mean? I mean, is there any, they can rent places that have 4 or 5 different, at least 3 different rental properties in one home with all on-street parking. If we're allowing them to rent that, I'm just thinking, maybe outside the box, but what do we do with those people? They probably assume when they rent that that's going to be available.
Lisa?
Thank you. My understanding was that in our zoning ordinance with rental property, that the zoning does, in a number of zoning classes, dictate how many parks need to be provided per unit. And, I know that we've run up against that with some of our own developments, like Trolley Quarter Flats and those, federal building, how many parks per apartment. And obviously, you want to encourage people to use alternative modes of transportation and not be car dependent. So when parking spaces are at a premium, you'd think people would, maybe not bring as many vehicles, but they do, and they have visitors, and that stuff happens. But I think even with converted dwellings that are converted into rental units, I think that there is a duty for the landlord to provide off-street parking. And, even if they don't give them a garage, they have to give them a place to get off the road. And if some of them aren't doing that, that also could be a zoning violation, and that may be just a matter of simple enforcement there. I think that's a number of landlords that we talked to when we had the Housing Code Task Force. They were looking for ways that they could tear down a dilapidated garage, pave where it used to be, and make a small lot for people to get off the street. And there were some zoning hurdles that they had to go through, and maybe they weren't allowing that to happen. But we had even talked about loosening that up, because there's some rental properties with some pretty awful and useless garages that if they demolish them and make parking, that would solve some of it. So I think there's more than one discussion we can have about, how high-capacity rentals behave. When there's 3, 4 rentals in a converted dwelling, where do the cars go? But I think that shouldn't preclude us from taking this step, because this is a totally separate activity. Plan Commission is going to have to deal with the parking, how many parking spaces a rental has, that's their forte, and how many they allow. When they approve a development, new or modified, when they approve a development and the parking is inadequate on day one, you're setting yourself up for problems. We have some of those. But, there's also times where if we would enforce the proper zoning or enforce the proper amount of off-street parking in a UDD, we wouldn't have these issues. And that's a philosophical discussion for them to have. But I think we still have to deal with the parking and the snow part.
Mary?
Rick, I really want to make it safe for your employees and Public Works to be able to do their job and do it in a way where they're safe and, the community is safe. We compromise with a parking ordinance for a street maybe just 3 months ago that's over by UWMC over there. And I remember the citizen that drafted a petition, I think he had a petition too, right? He circulated it, and we listened to his comments, and we're able to work out a compromise where it was during, those winter months, right? It was for a few months, and it would be during kind of similar like this, from like 2:30 to 6 a.m. or something. And it worked out well, and I agreed with it. I went with it because it was one particular street, right? Now tonight, we're considering this for the entire city of Wausau. And I'm just thinking ahead about when this goes to the full council for consideration. I keep thinking about the rest of the community and the citizens that will be coming forward, standing right there, and all their comments. And I want to just be able to prevent that from occurring. And so I hear you. I would love to, make it better, both ways for everyone. And we don't have real strong solutions right now. I think we have some great ideas that we can, look into and maybe do our due diligence and discovery on how we can make those things happen in the future. But it's just, it's tough. So I just want to share that I hear you and your perspective too.
Lisa?
Thank you. We're coming up on probably our 10th winter with this situation like it is, and it's not really getting any better, and now it's already snowing. So, I think that we certainly can have discussions about, here's what I see happening, is if we don't take this step, and we are reluctant to take this step because we're afraid people will violate, it's like we're allowing them to continue to violate and then condoning the violation. You can't not make a rule because somebody won't comply. Someone will always not comply. And so this conundrum only gets worse if we don't take action. And so I feel like we've made the most conservative restriction we possibly can. We limited it to the 3 high snow months and 4 hours a night only. We didn't tell people they had to be off the road at 10 p.m. and stay off till 7 a.m. year-round. I mean, it wasn't like that. I mean, there's a serious reason for why this needs to happen. And, yes, it's about the safety of the driver, but it's about people's ability to get in and out of their driveway, people's ability to get up and down their street. And it's, like Linda said, emergency vehicles are going to have troubles with this. I mean, how do you get a fire engine in there when it looks like that? How do you get an ambulance in when you can't plow the street? So you can't plow the street and it looks like this and somebody has a heart attack inside. What are you going to do? I mean, we need a solution, and I think we've been reluctant to make those solutions because, we know that in some cases it's going to be difficult for people to comply, but at the same time, when we call a snow emergency, they're forced to comply. So they're getting there somehow now. And if they're not, there's a consequence. There's this fine. So I feel like for us to kick the can down the road a little further and do nothing at the cusp of snow season, that's not right either.
Linda?
How did you pick the hours? When you talk about staff coming in, working 11 at night, I took that to mean, so the streets are pretty clean for people to go to work in the morning, but this is 2:30 to 6. Does that work for you?
It gave us some opportunity after the bars closed, and especially for downtown.
Maybe the ordinance can just be for downtown city of Wausau, huh?
And I do have empathy for what Mary's brought up, and there are a number of rental houses that have 4, 5, 6 cars, and we have empathy for that. But I also have to look at the protection of the city's liability of an accident happening or not getting a street plowed. Because we're right to the point where my driver's going to look down that street and say, I'm not going down there. And now we have a street that might not even be touched, and all of the other people on that block are going to suffer because of it. And all of the other citizens that are paying attention and making sure that their cars are off the road are going to suffer because maybe 1 or 2 are not complying.
Can I will most likely vote just to pass this on. I'm not convinced. I'm still wondering, if we have rentals that are not offering parking, is that against zoning? Is this the landlord's duty then to find parking for these people? Because I haven't heard that yet. I heard, well, it should go to plan. I don't understand that. I mean, is there an ordinance or zoning that they need off-street parking? I don't do plans, so I don't know.
I don't have all the details with that, especially with the existing rentals. I don't know. I mean, I can definitely look and Bill and I can have a conversation on that. I do know, like with some of our new developments, we do have higher dense developments, and even our new zoning code is, there's actually language in there, I do know this, about new developments, and that they are allowed under consideration to have on-street parking, for part of their tenants, So this has implications all the way around, but, so either, something might have to change there
Yeah.
with that language,
Yeah.
with the new zoning code. As we look in this, I'm conflicted on this. I mean, there's a lot of challenges with this. There's, from the selfish side on DPW, it's great,
Right,
let's
and-
clear
and
the
I
streets
agree.
and
I
let's
mean-
people down. But but there are, when we talk about developments and what we've been doing for the last couple of years through community development, and I had conversations with Chris, both the Brads on this as well, and these are some of the concerns they brought up. So, I feel obligated to at least bring those forward tonight, that they aren't here. And so, and I do, my challenge is how often do I declare a snow emergency? That's what this is coming up. Right now, 2 to 3 a year, I think, is about our average. If we don't have another consideration, snow emergencies will be more and more frequent. So I'll be declaring them for 48, 72 hours at different times. So, and it might be for a 4-inch snowfall, Then we have more and more people, they seem to become immune, numb to them. They aren't listening to them, just as Lisa said. That's a driving factor on this, So, I mean, as you can see in here, I didn't make a strict recommendation, this is discussion moving forward. I like the idea for the winter because of the snow, keeping our guys, safe, get through the routes as soon as we can, keep the streets clean. But there are, I mean, it's citywide, as you said, and it's across the board for all departments within the city.
Well, I just worry if we as a city are saying, you can make this development with on-street parking, and then say, what, you can't park there in the winter and during the night. I mean, I think that I think we'll be called on that because I think it's contradictory. And so I think there's I agree with Eric, there's more of a discussion. I would love this to happen because I have residents that get mad, I get it. But, we just, if our new zoning laws is, and if we have even new development that have, that are using on-street parking, they can't put their cars on their backs. I just don't know, I mean, if there was a place to go.
We get those questions too, like if we have areas where people can't park, and stuff, or we declare a snow emergency for 3 days for snow removal or whatever, we do get the questions. I know PD does too. Well, where am I supposed to go? I don't know, I don't know what's around
I
you.
do, that's my question is, isn't a 72-hour snow emergency the exact same thing? People have to
It
find a
is.
place to go, they have
Yes.
to get off the
Yes,
road.
it is.
And there's going to be a $100 ticket if they don't. So, they're going to be forced to figure something out either way. So a snow emergency is sudden and often unexpected, and so would you rather have people in a situation where they have to go, oh my God, I have to figure this out today? Or you have a rule come in that says, you know what, between the hours of 2 and 6 in the winter, I can't park in the street. And that person needs to figure something out for a longer period of time, but the whole city knows the rules then. It's not, I can't park there today, or I can't park there until Friday. It's, you know what, during the core of the winter snow removal season, residents in Wausau don't park on the street between 2 and 6. And other cities have these same rules. So, as we work with developments and zoning codes and the Plan Commission and developments and UDD, we can kind of figure that out. I think that we also, if we're going to go forward and look at some of the things we do to help neighborhoods be successful, maybe it's not such a bad idea to let that landlord tear down that awful 2-car garage and pave it and make 4 parking stalls. You know, let people find a way to get their people off the street. We were resistant to that for years. You know, I know 3 landlords that have properties down here that have wanted to do that for a long time, and they've been told no, that that's not an option. And so I think as a city, we can be more friendly to things like that, which will help solve some of it as well.
Yes, Corey?
I just wanted to add, from my perspective, obviously we get the situations from both sides. We put through things here based on city staff feedback and citizen feedback. Related concerns on the same issue that we brought before this committee for consideration. In that same vein, after snow emergencies, I field a lot of calls from people that get the snow emergency citation. And some of those residents, in speaking about Becky's point about the zoning, what we do have though is current residences that they have parking available, but it's off the alley. That's the only way to get to the driveway and the garage. So that's one aspect of the parking availability, which sometimes shuts down during the winter because the city can't maintain the alleyways in that regard. So I just want to make sure you guys recall that aspect too, because I field a lot of calls about that during the winter months.
Wouldn't it then be if a landlord's only off-street parking for his tenants is alley access, it would be incumbent upon that landlord then to take care of that alley? I mean, that landlord's a property owner, and people take care of their own alleys all the time.
That has come up too, and in some cases, the landlord, with you have a string of residences, the issue that I've seen or people have brought forth to me is that one person may be responsible for a portion of that, but you have several owners on that block, and then you have a cooperative agreement, and whether or not people are willing to pitch in is the question. And that exact same scenario came up last year with one person who called in that they tried to get an arrangement with their fellow residents on both sides of the alley, and a few would chip in, and they ended up contracting a plow. But over the years, people move or financial situations change. All of a sudden, more people are subsidizing the cost of clearing that alley. So to your point, that's true, but then we still have the issue of.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all good until the person on the end says no, and then there's no outlet. So, I think though that I don't think that we should not take action, and I don't think that we should kick the can down the road another winter because the developments that have the issues aren't going away. The old housing that has the issue isn't going away. Winter isn't going away. And Wausau had this rule before. We tried this even odd thing as an experiment, and it's been a 10-year experiment that has really created all of these 200 cars that were going around ticketing. And that's how out of hand it's become. Prior to that time, there was no such thing as parking overnight, and some of those old houses are still there. And so there had to have been a way to get this accomplished prior to the change. And, we've determined that since the change, in most areas, it's not working. So all we're asking to do is change back. It's nothing new. It's just this overnight thing in the winter, I think, is a failed experiment.
On my block, I have several alley access, and somehow they knew that in wintertime it's going to snow, they're going to have to deal with that alley access. And, so I don't really have too much sympathy for people that, have, that because of alley access can't get to their alley. You just have to make sure that you take care of it. Linda?
If Public Works and Police Department are happy with this, we don't have a motion on the floor,
We
right?
do not.
I
As
would
yet.
move to approve the proposed ordinance, and I would direct staff over the winter to kind of monitor what some of the violation and enforcement issues are, bring it back to the committee in the spring. And whoever we have liaison with the Landlords Association, maybe there could be some outreach to them in terms of this new ordinance coming into effect this winter, and that they need to be diligent about accommodating their tenants' needs.
There is a motion, is there a
I'll
second?
second.
There is a second with
Yep.
Lisa. Is there any further public comment with regard to this? Yes, Mary?
I just want to add that we know that we talk about this every single year, right? But yet we choose to put it on the agenda right before, not even 30 days before like winter. I mean, it's already winter and I get it. I just think that it's such bad timing because we just went through a whole backlash from the community about a parking ramp ordinance. And I want us to be aware of that, you know, we really want to garner everyone's support, right? Or as much as we possibly can. And now we're going to throw this out there too. I can only imagine what the next council meeting is going to be like. And I'm assuming this is going to go on to, if it moves, you know, if it moves forward on whatever happens tonight, it's going to be on that. Yeah, so at the end of this month, this room is going to be full again, and we're going to have to deal with that again. I just think it's timing. Timing is everything. And I wish that we could have had this discussion maybe, when it's hot outside, right? And no one
When
truly
it's
cares.
too hot for anyone to care.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
You know, it's a great strategy. Maybe we can do that next time. And I haven't even gotten a chance to talk to constituents about their reaction to that. And I have some of us have our neighborhood meetings next week, Monday. And so
Why don't we put it on the first agenda of December?
that's what
That'll give everybody time to get to a neighborhood group and answer questions and get some feedback. Normally, our CISM items they don't go to the immediate next meeting anyway. It would go, is it the 10th? December 10th?
I believe
Is
so.
it, Lori's nodding?
our next council meeting,
Yes. No, the next,
the next CISM meeting?
yeah.
Council meeting.
Or
Council meeting.
Council meeting for a final vote. So 12/10? Yes, and so that would give us almost 4 weeks to
That's
get
why-
with people, engage public feedback.
Yeah, because I think it's important for us to put it out there.
It's not a rush. I mean, we've been waiting 10 years, so I
Yeah.
think a few more weeks isn't,
I-
Rick's smiling.
Yeah, I was actually hoping we can just, you know, not have a motion. I mean, I know there's a motion and a second out there already, but maybe table the discussion until the next CISM meeting, because it's not going away. We're not going to have all the solutions, we're not going to have everything on the table.
Right.
At least push it out to our
think-
next CISM meeting.
Well, and I think this tonight, though, I think we've discussed it in the committee, I think sufficiently, so the committee knows what's happening and what's going to happen. We need to advance the discussion, let the full council start talking about it, because
Okay.
they all are going to have their neighborhood group meetings, and they're all going to get constituent feedback. No question, there'll be media coverage about this. The media watches our meetings, even if they're not here. So I think that this will draw a media story one way or the other, it's fine. And even if people fill the room, that's public engagement, it's totally fine. I mean, if people come in and whether they're happy or mad, that's fine. If they're willing to take time to interact with us, we're willing to listen. So I think, you know, it's just, we need to get a conversation started. And I think if we forward this to council, and we're going to discuss it there too, because, you know, we're missing 6 of our members. So, you know, once we have a full council together to hash it over, the other representatives of the other districts may have other opinions too, so.
But it goes into effect December the 1st, so did you want to?
Well, in this case, it would go into effect after publication. So assuming the council would pass it, they wouldn't get it until about the 14th of December. But going forward, the new policy would be 12/1 to 2/28. So the implementation would be a couple weeks late in our
So the
case.
understanding is that until the ordinance is published as such, it will go
Right.
into effect, even though it's
Right.
so that December
But in
the
the
1st.
future, that cutoff would
In the future,
be
that will be
12/1.
December the 1. Just so that we,
Well-
you know, just so that we understand
Right. I
what's
mean, we want to give
happening
people
here.
time for some public engagement, so skipping the 26th of November certainly makes sense. Go to 12/10, let the council hash it out there. If they like it and they want to go forward with it, you know, and it could be something where the council may decide that they want to try it on a 2-year trial. Maybe they want to give it a 2-year trial. You know, I mean, we've done that before, where we've tried it for a year, and then we've come back and analyzed it as a committee to see what our results were, and see if we want to amend it. Maybe we want to change the time frame. Maybe you want to change the hours. We don't know that yet. And so if they're willing to move it forward, and they want to try it, you know, for a year or two, and then, or try it for this snow season, and have it come back to this committee in the spring and have us analyze our outcomes, we certainly could do that, too.
That was in the motion.
Is that in your motion?
It was
There you
in
go.
the motion.
All that was just sucked up into the motion?
No,
Oh,
I said that.
okay.
That I would direct staff to study the violations and implementation problems.
Yep.
And come back in the spring when it's hot and not snowing. And we could evaluate.
So there's a motion in front of us?
Yep.
All in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
I will be voting aye. I'm sorry,
I said no.
No, so there are 2 noes,
Aye.
3
And I'm an aye.
yeses and 2
So
noes.
3 to 2.
Yeah, 3 to 2. Thank you very much for that discussion. Moving then on to the next item on the agenda is the discussion possible action on amending section 10.20.070 handicap parking stalls designated, repeal and recreate section 10.20.080 no parking and restricted parking areas designated.
Court?
I see the attorneys here too, so I don't know if they they came here, I don't want to put them here for nothing, but ultimately this came up when we've had a couple citations come through and disabled parking citations come through in these areas, and this is a chance to sort of make it clear as to what the locations are for the disabled parking in this spot on Jefferson Street, and also to we also had some different signs put up that are in compliance, I should
This
say,
is
in
kind of a-
compliance with the disabled regulation.
Kind of a clarity and housekeeping type thing?
In essence, was there more to that I should add?
So yeah, on the north side of Jefferson Street at the 400 block, there were a total of 5 parking spaces. There were 6 parking spaces. The signs were not clear at all on what technically was handicap, even though it all was, and how the signs were laid out according to transcode. So this is what it's being, I guess, proposed to clarify that, because as he said, I've only been here, since September 3rd, and in the past month, I've had to dismiss 3 handicap parking citations because of the confusion and the signage. So that's what this is. So it would be taking the most, so on the northern side of the Jefferson Street at the 400 block, the spot immediately east of 4th Street, we would be removing that handicap spot based on not being able to properly sign it as a handicap spot. There's a stop sign right there, and so we can't get a handicap sign there. So we would be removing that sign, or that spot completely, but then there would still be 5 remaining handicap spots. So that's all that really is being added to that section.
This is kind of a dumb question, but is that the spot that we approved when the Grand Theater came in last year? Didn't Sean come in asking for an extra spot and we approved it? Actually, it was a couple.
Yeah.
Okay, so we approved them, but they're unable to sign them, so you can't enforce them. So, all right, I get that.
The one we can't
The one we
sign.
can't.
But the other ones are fine.
But the other ones.
Okay, then I'll move to approve.
There is a motion to approve. Is there a second? There's Mary's second on that. Any further comments or questions with regard to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is agreed to, and that section is adopted. Moving then on to construction updates for 2019. I think Eric has that.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I have had some press releases out, so hopefully everybody has seen those along with some emails. So I guess we can get right into, I guess, our major projects here. So Town Line Road, good news first, that one is done. Other than some warranty issues, and they'll be back in the spring for that. First Avenue, the contractor did not get all of the concrete down this year, so those areas like sidewalk areas, some drive approaches that were not done were put in asphalt for the winter. So they're not gravel, so it will be easier for the homeowners to plow, keep the snow, maintain those. In the spring, that blacktop will be removed and concrete will be poured. I've been out there a couple different times lately, spoke with some of the residents. We're tracking their concerns and their complaints, and so we're working with our inspector. This is a DOT inspected job, so on First Avenue. So we're relaying all of those to that inspector that we have, which is AECom, and they're tracking all of those. The contractor is pretty much done, other than cleanup, and I think that there's gonna be some sidewalk cleanup and stuff done that street will open tomorrow afternoon. First will, yep. We did get the main line striping down, but there is quite a bit of pavement marking yet to do in the spring. It just got too cold, that pavement got too cold. Any questions?
What was
specific?
some of the major, what was some concerns there?
Really, a lot of it was the restoration, the landscape restoration. Some, people were also concerned about the fact that, they had a concrete drive approach and now it's blacktop. And so we're getting that message out, and I think we're doing a lot better now over the last week or so. So those are the main concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. On Thomas Street, again, we got the main line striping down on that project, but not all of the pavement marking is done because of the temperatures. We may have to redo some of that. It just depends on how well it adhered. But that street too will open tomorrow afternoon. The big issues with Thomas Street is the signals. They have not been delivered, the traffic signals. So 3rd Avenue and Thomas will open up as a 4-way stop, which will be, I'm sure we will get phone calls on, because it will back up.
Still going to have the two-way on Third?
No,
That'll go away,
that
right?
will come down,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Yep, that would all start being taken down tomorrow. And the street lights, now those are supposed to be delivered here within the next week. As soon as the traffic signals come in and as soon as the lights come in, they will start being put up. The contractor is going to put those up this winter, okay? We don't have a delivery date on the traffic signals yet. I also haven't received any information back from the contractor or their sub on when they ordered those. So depending on when that is and, if it's determined that they delayed that for any reason, then there are liquidated damages in our contract for that, and we will assess those as appropriate. Yep.
Question, Lisa?
Just a quick one. Is there any need for temporary or emergency lighting on Thomas through that residential area? Or is it, I mean, obviously, when it's dark, residents are going to be going through with their headlights on. If they just use caution, are they good to travel that?
I think so, but it might be a little bit uncomfortable, with people walking and stuff in that area.
They're going to have to slow down, and it's going to be dark, so.
It will be dark. I did get your email today. I have not, had a chance to find out or talk with Rick Pergalski if there's something temporary we could put on at the corners or something, just to help out.
Right. And if that would happen and we find out they didn't order the stuff timely, then hopefully we would charge them for that. Yep.
Remind me, didn't we have a temporary light on Sherman and Third? Right before we're gonna start all the construction? I thought there was a light.
Temporary
there, a
stoplight.
Yeah, temporary
There was.
stoplight, right?
There was, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So, yeah, traffic signal, you're talking. Yeah, I'm talking about.
I'm talking about like the lights, the traffic lights. No, not street lights.
Stop and go lights.
Stop and go
Right.
lights.
Yeah, we did look at putting that up, but it's not an easy intersection and it's very expensive. So, and at the time, when we were trying to make that decision, the information we had is we expected something by the beginning of December to go up. So we thought a week or two, but now we're kind of in the situation, we don't know when they're coming. So it didn't seem to be like a real feasible option for the temporary. But depending on what dates we get back, if they say we're not going to get them for a few months, then yeah, we're going to have to do something that will definitely change the situation.
Okay. Same thing with the lights then too. If we
Yeah,
need some,
yeah.
even if we put a few in between at the corners that.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Going down the list, First Street from Short to DeKalb, that's completed. North Second Street from McClellan to Grant. They are going to try to get striping down next week. If they don't, they'll just wait till spring. It's just going to depend on the temperature but that street is open, the temperature of the pavement. That's by the church there? Okay, all right. West Wausau Avenue, sanitary sewer, and water extension, that street is open. There's some landscaping and things that are being done and erosion mat put down. The fire station egress project, that's ongoing. It's, a majority of it is complete, but it will be complete prior to the fire station being completed, next year, so. Yeah. Concrete pavement repair project, we have one location left on Bridge and Third Avenue. They're coming back Monday or Tuesday. They're going to do the other piece of that. That's the last piece. So by the end of next week, that should be done. So they'll have to pour the concrete and then they'll have to let it cure for a couple days before they remove all of that. And then Sturgeon Eddy Memorial Park Road, that road will be put back into binder course for the winter. And then as early as we can in the spring, we'll come back in and put the concrete curb and everything in and get that back and fully finished.
Is it open now? Is Sturgeon Eddy open now?
I don't think it's open. I don't think it will be till.
It wasn't last night when the airport committee members tried to use it to get to the airport. I think it was
Were they
still.
putting binder down today, Rick? Do you know?
Tara tried it and it didn't go,
Tomorrow?
so.
Yeah, I thought Thomas
I'm not
Street
sure, I was
just-
gonna touch base with Brian, but I know they were shaping it earlier this week for binder.
Okay.
But I
Yeah,
did see blacktop was moving. There were some contractors that were laying blacktop today, so the plant must have been open.
yeah, and my recollection, talking with Brian, I think it was supposed to go in today or tomorrow. So as soon as they get that blacktop down, it will open.
Okay, thanks. It's my route to church too, and I didn't
Okay.
even notice it until I went down that road, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I gotta go through, the whole southeast
Right.
side now,
Yeah.
so.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Okay. No, that Fifth Street, yeah, that's TDS, the fiber optic. So we have been out there, I think, a good 2 or 3 times a week, so, there've been a lot of challenges with TDS, so, it does, yeah, very much so. It's a problem. Yep.
Did you have any barricade trouble this morning on Thomas? Because I thought it was open yesterday.
Oh.
I read your memo too quickly and I took it to airport.
There's a lot of traffic going down
I
there
feel like
now.
I'm on the salt flats.
Yep.
This isn't open. It was fun.
Yeah, well, good, yeah.
Any comments any further questions or comments with regard to construction? Hearing none, then future agenda items, anything special for future agenda items? Hearing none, we'll find something for you. I'm sorry. Linda?
Westie's neighborhood group on signage, but I'm not clear on what grant they were hoping to get and right by the end of the year.
I think it's for those, the neighborhood signs.
Sign it.
CDA has.
Community,
Oh,
community development, I think, is working with them
so
also.
Tammy's gonna get it on CISM maybe for December.
Maybe,
Okay.
I talked with Tammy yesterday about some streetscaping, and we talked about possibly they were gonna look into doing something on top of the street markers, because they don't have the decorative light poles like the other neighborhoods did. So I gave her some networking people to network with to get some ideas.
okay, motion to thus, any further comments or questions? Hearing none, a motion to adjourn would be in order. There is a motion, there is a second. All in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.